What place is overrated to visit? Hollywood. The most disappointing garbage and piss covered place on earth. Lol, I used to live about 20 minutes away from Hollywood. My wife and I went back to go visit family and she wanted to go to Hollywood. I tried telling her it's not what you think it's like, but she was adamant. So I took her. She was so disappointed. My wife is actually visiting my family in California right now. LPT, do not go to Hollywood. Its stars on the sidewalk and everywhere literally smells like urine mixed with trash. It's dirty as fug and can be dangerous. Save the money and don't go. I saw my second ever murdered corpse in Hollywood, just after the Freddy vs. Jason in 2005. I saw my first one a week earlier in San Francisco. I was on holiday from the UK. Thanks, Murica. I frequent Los Angeles a lot, and while you're not wrong, there is a lot of beauty in that area. It's right in the middle of the ocean and the mountains. Beverly Hills, Brentwood, Hollywood Hills, Laurel Canyon, West Hollywood, Mandeville Canyon, Los Feliz, Santa Monica, Malibu, San Fernando Valley, all gorgeous areas. Hollywood Boulevard is an overrated tourist trap, but the surrounding neighborhoods are so pretty. I tell people this all the time. LA is garbage unless you're going for something specific like an event. The food is good though. Other than that, it's definitely not a place you'd want to go out of your way to live in. Times Square on New Year's. If you know, you know. Who doesn't want to make out wearing a full diaper? Times Square at any time, TBH. My parents took me to New York before Christmas. It wasn't even New Year's and that place was nuts. It was a Saturday and there was something calling a SantaCon where people dress like Santa and get drunk. There was a lot of puke by the tree at Rockefeller Center. When I was in college a couple years ago, my buddies and I thought it would be a great time to go to Times Square on New Year's. To even get inside we had to be there around 9 a.m. Police had the entire square cordoned off and were checking everyone's bag that entered. Once you got into the square you were not allowed to leave. So we had to stand for hours in the square with nothing to do until the festivities actually started. Around 1 p.m. the stores and restaurants closed, which coincidentally meant no more bathrooms. People were going in bottles, holding it, or a couple times I saw them just going in the road. It was a mess. A once-in-a-lifetime mess, but a mess nevertheless. Edited, repeated sentence and clarification. When I went they were doing several concerts on different stages as well as a huge open area that was just under the building where the ball dropped. When I said you couldn't leave I meant that area under the ball. If you left that area you weren't allowed back into that specific spot. So you basically had to decide whether you wanted to see the performances or be really close to the ball. Plymouth Rock, the only boat small enough to have landed on it would be for ants. Came here for this. Plymouth Rock, New England's lamest tourist attraction. It's a fake rock in a sand pit covered with Newport butts and Dunk's cups. Also, it's not even the actual spot the pilgrims landed. Go to Provincetown and see the real monument. Edit, 100% agree. Plymouth Plantation is where it's at. Skip the rock, go for the plantation. As a Plymouth native, the rock is incredibly underwhelming. However, I do recommend the plantation. The workers do a great job of recreating 1621. The town has done well revamping the downtown area with shops and food, and the Mayflower 2 better be back before the 2024 celebration or people are going to be pissed. Yeah, we were staying in Plymouth, otherwise we wouldn't have bothered. It's a rock in a hole covered by a grate that may or may not be the actual rock. What was much more interesting was the hill across the streets that the pilgrims used to bury their dead in during a particularly nasty winter, but in secret because they didn't want the natives to know their numbers were dwindling. It was such a secret that eventually that burial ground was forgotten about. Generations later the hill was washed out by a bad storm and all those bodies resurfaced. Now that's the kind of shit they should advertise, lol. The New York Stock Exchange. You can actually go in and see the trading floor. But it is a stock exchange. There is no money you can steal. The New York Stock Exchange, on the other hand, highly recommend. Hey, in reality not much is traded on the floor anymore. Most share are traded on electronic exchanges. The NYSE is basically used for conferences and a TV studio for the business networks. Not anymore. They closed it when some jokers went it during trading hours and threw a bunch of money into the air, which disrupted trading. The Little Mermaid statue in Copenhagen. It's just so meh. And too far away from the city center, especially if it's freezing outside like the time I visited it. Just get a souvenir or a postcard or something. Copenhagen itself is beautiful though, very highly recommended. Same for the Pissing Boy statue in Brussels, though you don't really need a detour for it and might as well see it. My memory of the statue is of some Spanish kids climbing all over it and a man dressed as a Viking shouting at them to stop. It was a surreal and beautiful moment. I visited Copenhagen a few years ago and didn't even get to see the statue because it had been temporarily removed after protesters threw paint all over it. The city itself is absolutely gorgeous though and is well worth visiting for a long weekend. Japan has such a romanticized view of France that they actually have a term, Paris syndrome, for the sudden shock suffered by Japanese tourists when they see that France isn't how they imagined. My friend's iPhone got pickpocketed in Paris, and his wife chewed him out for it. Ironically, her phone was also pickpocketed 3 days later in Athens. My wife and I luckily came out unscathed, but I was using pockets with snaps and had taken precautions. I thought Paris was beautiful when I visited with my school in year 8 to 9. Being smaller probably has a way bigger impact though because everything feels way bigger, so Paris was insane. That whole trip was dope. The French countryside, Normandy, British and French WW1 memorials, dope. Area 51. Nice, try Area 51 guard. I loved my visit to Area 51. Boardwalk in Monopoly. New York Avenue is where it's at. Especially if you're playing $500 for landing on Go rules, because you can't roll a 1. So now I know everywhere I want to visit is overrated. I was right to stay home and play video games then, I guess. If it's a super popular spot on Instagram, it's probably overrated. So, Bali? Dubai. Unless you're really into spending all day in an air-conditioned building, then going to the air-conditioned basement to get in an air-conditioned car to travel to the air-conditioned basement of another air-conditioned building, in which case, do I have a city for you? It felt like a city without a soul. My brother once showered in what he thought was a shower in Dubai. While on a stopover, a woman in a hijab walked in, screamed and ran off. Then about 5 minutes later some airport security came in and removed him. Turned out he'd actually showered in the place Muslims wash themselves in before they pray, and he'd been fully nude in a prayer room. They must have thought he was a LGBT campaigner, so they kept him for a while and eventually let him go when they started to see it was an accident, although TBH I just think they thought he was special needs. Connecting through their airport was enough for me to never want to go there again. Someone will think everywhere is overrated. If you check the travel sub and say you're going to a European capital city, it's overrated and you need to go to the countryside. If you're going to the countryside and skipping the capital city, you are missing out because it's a gem. Go where you want. Read up on it so you have reasonable expectations of what you will see though. No kidding. All I can think reading this thread is, and people think I'm a salty grouch? I thought Vegas and San Francisco were great. Dubai and Abu Dhabi. No salary could make me move there. The people of Dubai don't like the Flintstones, but the people of Abu Dhabi do. Edit, you all should have seen my dad fratting with daughter's Halloween costume. This isn't even my final form. Abu Dhabi. One of the few places where at the airport you see women on full burqa mode right next to Russian hookers in a mini skirt. What a time to be alive. Oslofjorden. Please go anywhere else in Norway when you visit. The word fjord is very misleading, since the Scandinavian meaning is nothing more than a narrow inlet. To see the proper glacial fjords you need to travel to the west coast. Mall of America. It just a mall with a lot of stuff in it. My opinion would have probably be different if I didn't live in Minnesota. Minnesotan who agrees with you, but I will say it was a little different when it was new. The sheer size of it blew our minds, and the stores were much more unique and quirky back then. It was filled with shit you didn't see anywhere else. Now it's just the same standard chains you see in every suburban mall, often with multiple locations of the same store because of the huge size. Normal malls are dying out and suck even more than they used to, so if anything the Mall of America is getting better by comparison. Mount Rushmore. Its face is on a rock basically and smaller than you think. The unfinished Crazy Horse Monument is way more impressive emo, but it makes me a little sad because it is the absolute opposite of what Crazy Horse would have wanted. The Black Hills are cool though. Four Corners. It's hours away from anything notable and there isn't really anything to do there except a picture and buy Native American crafts. Just follow the broken glass bottles on the side of the road and you'll soon be there. There's some great stuff around though, Monument Valley, Mesa Verde, Durango, Ure, Telluride, Moab etc. But yeah, it's get a picture, fry bread, Najavo taco and roll. UAE, it's the most culturally deficient place you will ever see in your life. I had a friend who needed help deciding between Dubai and Tokyo for a summer vacation. I think I had a fit when he said he was leaning towards Dubai. Don't go to the West Rim if you're seeing the Grand Canyon. Yes, the skywalk is there, but that's about all that differs it from the rest. West Rim gets all of the Chinese and Las Vegas tourists who will literally trample you to get into the shuttle buses and fill up restaurants as soon as they open. I know North Rim is closed during winter, but if anything you should go to South Rim. I lived at the North Rim one summer for work. It's amazingly beautiful there, and much cooler as it's so high up. I definitely recommend driving to the North Rim if you've the time. It's also generally only open from May to October as the snow can get pretty deep after that. The gift shop in Jacob Lake, where you turn to get to the North Rim, is overrated, but the only place to get gas for miles. The Mona Lisa in Louvre in Paris. It's just a small painting hanging quite far away in a really crowded room full of tourists. Don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful, iconic painting, but it's not worth visiting the Louvre only for the Mona Lisa. The majority of the other artworks in that museum are more impressive than the Mona Lisa. It's famous because it was stolen and got a lot of press. It's a beautiful painting, but God, there are so many more incredible works of art at the Louvre. Bondi Beach in Sydney. Overcrowded, everything there is way overpriced. Also, there are so many other beautiful beaches in Australia. Bondi is probably one of the ugliest. Pisa. Besides the small square with the tower where everyone is taking the same shitty joke pic. And guys trying to sell you toys. The rest of the town is pretty shit. You're in Tuscany, go to any small town and you'll enjoy it far more. I strongly agree. I was disappointed with Pisa. Thankfully, the rest of Tuscany is amazing. Definitely Majorca. I'm German enough, I don't want to hear 90% German on holiday in Spain as well. The quieter, less central parts of Majorca are gorgeous, especially for snorkeling and diving, but the Playa de Palma, or at least that part, is horrendously German lol. Same for Magaluf in English. Inside the island and some little towns on the opposite side are really nice. Yeah, it was pretty surprising to see those German beer tents and the weird folk music in Majorca. Even the menus were in German, so it felt more like a colony. If you're ever in Berlin, do all the touristy stuff in one day. Go to the Reichstag and walk to the Brandenburger Tor, visit the Holocaust Memorial, then walk to the Alexanderplatz. There's not that much to see, but that city has so much more cool places to visit or to hang out. Especially if you're looking to meet people or not pay much for little value. When I was in Berlin, I did all the touristy things in one day. Saw the Holocaust Memorial, then walked to the Brandenburg Gate and the Reichstag. I remember then going through a park and walking to the Topography of Terror, walked past some sections of the Berlin Wall and then ended up at Checkpoint Charlie. Would definitely recommend it. Toyosu Fish Market. The one that replaced Tsukiji as the fish auction central of Tokyo in 2018. You get to watch the auction process, but only if you go early in the morning. And even then, only through small glass windows 2 stories above the auction block. If there are more than a couple dozen other visitors, you will not be able to see anything. As for a Toyosu dining experience, you're better off eating sashimi and sushi literally anywhere else in Tokyo or in Japan. They mark up the prices at Toyosu more than 300%, and claim that these are the original sashimi houses that have been serving fresh fish for generations. Yet the quality is no different than any other restaurant. And the wait times are more than an hour, as each shop only has room to seat about 10 to 15 patrons per shop at a time. Getting to Toyosu also cuts your day in half, as the metro route requires you to go several stops out of the normal junior line for Tokyo, and you will need to walk 5 to 10 minutes at each stop as part of transit. Once at the Toyosu buildings, you will spend even more time walking from the station to the restaurants and auction areas. It is not a convenient place to visit and not very special. I would cross it off any travel itinerary. Edit. As an added note, some have asked if Tsukiji is still in operation. It is. Anyone who has traveled to the old fish market can still have the same experience, as many of the vendors, shops and restaurants surrounding the old fish auction are still in business, minus the fish auction of course. You have shitty tourists to thank for the fish auction experience. Tourists kept disrupting the auction or touching the tuna. You touch it, you buy it, so they had to physically separate the tourists. If you're in Dublin, stay away from the Temple Bar area. It's ridiculously overpriced and is not at all what a real Irish bar is like at all. I live in Vancouver, Canada, and there is a place called Capilano Suspension Bridge. It sounds good but is overpriced and loaded with people. There is another one. Forgot its name, but visited a few years ago. Not so crowded and beautiful. Edit. Lynn Canyon. Bourbon Street, New Orleans. It's really just the same as any other bar district in any other large city around the world. Same old cover bands playing the same old songs that you'd hear anywhere. You can experience all you need just by walking down the street for an hour and not going in anywhere. Frenchman Street on the other hand is absolutely amazing. Everyone should go to NOLA just for that. Edit, I'm not knocking NOLA itself though, that city is amazing and definitely somewhere I'm going to return to next time I return to the USA on holiday. I don't know if this redeems it, but Bourbon Street seemed unique in its level of grime, compared to other places I've visited. Last time I went, in the space of a couple hours, I had a homeless man with clear mental problems throw his walker at me for reasons known only to him. I saw a couple fishing everyone's drink cups out of the public trash cans for the last bit at the bottom of each, and I did this while dodging piles of human poop on the sidewalk. Was in New Orleans last year for my honeymoon, and I expected to hate Bourbon Street for the reasons you listed, but I loved it. I was not looking forward to that part of our trip, 4 days in Miami, 3 in New Orleans. Loved Miami, but we were mostly going to New Orleans because my wife had always wanted to go. But yeah, I absolutely loved it, surprised the fug out of my wife. Not sure if being there during Halloween had any bearing on it. Bourbon Street was undergoing a lot of renovation and road works at the time as well, but I am desperate to go back now, by far the best place I've been to. I'm not even a big drinker, lucky if I had maybe one drink a night, but would go back in a heartbeat. Edit, wrong use of there. Anyone said Niagara Falls yet? Hear me out on this one. The falls themselves are beautiful, and I guess if you're really into the history of a waterfall and its surroundings you can spend half a day there. But once you've seen it, you've got nothing. The Canadian side is a discount Vegas, which Vegas in itself has been listed like 18 times in this thread. The US side is slummy-ass Buffalo. Make Niagara a pit stop, not the destination. It's sad because the area surrounding Niagara Falls is beautiful, there's great bike paths, vineyards, the escarpment. The town itself is just this dilapidated mess. It's like they stopped investing in anything in 1997. Times Square for sure. Although it's cool to see all the lights, it's honestly just glorified ads everywhere you look. There's nothing really special about Times Square, lots of people, chain restaurants, subpar quality food, lots of homeless people on the streets, and random people trying to sell you stuff as you walk by. Honestly, Toys R Us was one of the best things there. Nothing like walking in and seeing that huge Ferris wheel and crazy toys everywhere. When they lost that, I think they lost their appeal. Brussels. If you're in Belgium, visit Ghent and Bruges. Who goes to a vacation in fucking Bruges? The Taj Mahal. Yes, it's beautiful but it's also overcrowded, which ruins any serenity, and everything that there's to see is visible on the pictures you've seen 1,000 times before. The inside is dark, surprisingly small, and you're rushed through. Agra Fort, overlooking the Taj Mahal, by contrast is equally gorgeous, vibrant and teeming with history. I enjoyed it much more. Edit to say that of course I'm not suggesting you should go to Agra and skip the Taj Mahal. That would be ridiculous. It's still neat to see. But keep your expectations in check, plan for hectic crowds, and there are other sites that are equally if not more impressive. Vegas fucking stinks. Similarly, Atlantic City is a dump. The Seven Wonders of the Earth, Venice anywhere that's being destroyed by tourism. The pyramids are the only of the seven wonders left, isn't it, aren't they? I didn't get anything out of Las Vegas. It was cool to see the themed hotels, but besides that it was just an overpriced cultureless soulless city designed to entertain you. Edit, I'm talking exclusively of the Strip. Isn't that exactly the point? What did you think it was going to be? Batu Caves in Kuala Lumpur. Saw Asia is full of karst caves. Many are bigger and aren't full of tourists. Asshole macaques are also everywhere. Earth. Thank goodness we decided to convert it to a water park, maybe that'll liven things up a bit. Lake Laogai, like yeah, it's an honor to get invited by the Earth King, but, in my opinion, it was 4 stars not 5, the food was overcooked and bland and the pillow was stone hard and they had nothing softer. Like if invited I'd go again, I just won't go out of my way to get invited again. Disneyland. It's just a lot of waiting for shitty rides. ITT, everywhere. New Zealand. Don't come here. Suspicious fry FACE. Nice try, but I don't think Chinese tourists read Reddit that much. Bali. It was beautiful 10 years ago, but now it's been ruined by influencers. I've worked for Disney and I currently work for Universal. Both are so overpriced. Fucking out-of-state yearly platinum pass for Disney is over 1K. Paris. The sightseeing hotspots are crowded, everything is ridiculously expensive and the metro smells like piss. Agree to disagree. Paris is the most beautiful city I've ever seen. Big cities in general. Emo when you go on vacation in a different country, or even just some other part of your country, it's so much more interesting to go to the more rural regions. I still don't get why tourists in my region, I'm from Bavaria, just go to explore the city, when there's such a beautiful scenery elsewhere. This can be applied to so many places and countries. Go explore the nature, it's beautiful. Edit, I might have used the term rural regions incorrectly, as I saw many of you getting confused. What I mean by that, are areas that do have some smaller towns around, but are a lot more out in the nature. Smiley face. Plymouth Rock. It's just a rock. It's not even a big rock, or a weird-looking rock, it's just a grayish lump the size of a beanbag chair with 1620 carved on it. I didn't pay anything to look at it and it still was a ripoff. There's a nice pizza place nearby though. South Beach, Miami. Overpriced bars and clubs. If you're a dude and you don't have a fine group of women with you, be ready to drop serious cash for a night out if you're there. There are better beaches up and down the coast, that won't force you into the terrible traffic and parking SB has. Really only worth it when you had to pay respects to D. Wade the God.